Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and my guest today is Greg Snider, the president of the Thunder Bay and District Injured Workers Support Group. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you. Good to be here.
In the interest of full disclosure, I want to mention that Greg and I are both members of the Thunder Bay Injured Workers Support Group. We're both volunteers on the board of directors, so these are issues that are pretty familiar to both of us. But Greg, let me ask you, starting out, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, so I'm work at Community Living, Thunder Bay. Right now, I'm retired from the OPS. I worked with the Ontario Disability Support Program.
The OPS, that's the Ontario Public Service.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I was a founding member of Ontario Public Service Employees Union's Disability Rights Caucus, which is a caucus made up of OPSU members with disabilities. We have a self-determination, so we select members. We have 10 members, and when we're missing a position, we ask for applications and we select a member to come in. So we're people with disabilities who get to speak, and we select who sits on the caucus. So we've caused OPSU some problems, but we have a voice. And OPSU gives us money to do that, which is something that I find Thunder Bay Injured Workers Support Group goes through as well, where you are made up of mostly injured workers. The difference being you don't get funding from the Wsib or anything, and you've got to go elsewhere to get your funding, which is a barrier to deal with. So anyway, I was a chair of that for 10 years.
And now that's a
provincial-wide, yeah.
Okay, and OPSU has what? How many members does OPSU have? This is all the Ontario Public Service and the Greater Public Service.
40,000?
40,000, okay. So it's quite a big group.
Yes, it's quite a big group.
All right, and you were chair of that disability caucus for all of Ontario.
For all of Ontario, yeah.
Excellent.
And I'm still sit on it, but I don't sit as a chair. When I left Ontario Disability Support Program, I wasn't sure I'd be around, so I stepped down as chair at that point. And I also was elected to the Provincial Human Rights Committee, and I spent 4 terms on the Provincial Human Rights Committee. And I chaired for, I think, a term during that time. And a couple of years ago, OPSU gave me the Human Rights Award.
Well, congratulations. That's quite an honor.
That. Yes, it is a very big honor, for sure.
So you've got a strong background in disability rights and human rights. When did you get involved with the Thunder Bay Injured Workers Support Group?
Well, I think that was your fault. I think you talked me into joining your group. I don't think you had a lot of talking to do. Like I said, I saw similarities between the two groups, and I'm very eager to chip in and to help where I can. And I got to be honest, I found it that the first year there, I think my jaw was on the floor more often than not with some of the stuff that I found out that was going on.
My goodness, so that was about 5 years ago you got involved with the injured workers. So what was it? Why was your jaw hanging down there? What were you seeing?
I think there's some perceptions that people have about injured workers, and I knew they weren't true, but I didn't know to the degree at which things weren't true. We have one of our activists is being deemed, she's having money taken off of her check based on working 40 hours a week, and yet WSIB, Workplace Safety Insurance Board, is working with her to get her hours at the employer, and they know she's only working 3 to 5 hours a week. They know that.
So she's only working like 4 or 5 hours a week, but they say she's working 40.
Well, they're deducting it off like she's working 40, and she's trying to work more hours, and they are apparently supporting the employer and saying, no, you need to work just what you're working, but we're going to deduct you income off you, like you're working 40 hours a week.
My goodness.
And that to me is mind-boggling. I just don't. Where do I get an understanding for that? There is no no way to grasp or to understand that kind of perception. And there's also experience rating is another one that I find mind-boggling once I got to understand how that works. And it's supposed to be a deterrent to employees having a safe workplace and a reward for those that have a safe workplace.
Okay.
But it's based on, and when I look into it, it's entirely based on cost to WSIB. If you keep costs down to WSB, no lost hours, then you get a reward. If there's lost hours, then you get penalized. So the employer who suppresses or tries to convince members not to apply is actually rewarded for that. Rather than being rewarded for having a safe workplace, he could also be rewarded simply for keeping his employees from filing complaints or filing claims. Sorry, not complaints, claims. And that is a barrier. So, on the other side, the employer who's honest and says, file a claim, here's the process, follow it through, he gets punished for it. Or he's more likely to get punished for it.
Right, so here's a program that was supposed to be a financial incentive for good health and safety, but it sounds like it's causing problems in the workplace.
Oh yeah, I was doing a health and safety training, and one of the instructors there was talking about a story, and I think it was in Sudbury, it was several years ago, but the company gave out jackets at the end of the year if there were no claims. So everybody who worked there got jackets. And and apparently those jackets, they're pretty proud of those jackets because some guy put in a claim, he had a permanent disability from a workplace injury, and he put in a claim, and they beat him up in the parking lot, his own co-workers, because they're going to lose their jacket. Personally, I don't think a jacket's worth that much, but it gets into that thing about my entitlements are to have that jacket, and you just destroyed my entitlement.
So this program is like driving a wedge between the workers and the workplace, and then sometimes between the worker and the employer as well.
Absolutely.
And so what happens?
Accomplishing its goal.
Okay, so and what happens in terms of the employer's behavior with the worker? What's going on there?
Like I say, I think the employer starts to, some employers anyway, and a fair number now, I think, are starting to deter people and discourage people from applying. And I know of one case, I talked to the father involved in it, and he worked at one of the young 18-year-old son, worked at one of the local department stores here, and he got hurt in the workplace, and he was going to put in a claim, and the manager said, if you put in a claim, you will never work in Thunder Bay again. And 18-year-olds, like, very susceptible to believing that kind of information. Now, he had a father that was understood the workplace and WSIB and health and safety and stuff, and I think he ended up putting in a claim because he had that outside knowledge, but not everybody has that. In fact, it isn't shared enough, I don't think.
And you were telling me earlier too that some workers have a choice of whether to go on workers' compensation benefits if they're hurt at work, or go onto their sick plan at work.
Yeah, and that gets into, like, we've had some cases that I've dealt with where a person's been injured at the workplace, and you say, fill out, you got to fill out the WSIB forms and stuff. They say, forget it. I've done it once. I've gone through that. I'm not doing it again. I'll take my sick benefits. And I'll use up my sick benefits before I'll take go through WSIB. And so people go off on long-term disability where the insurance company is paying that toll instead of having the employer pay. And I think that's the employer paying for lost time and lost wages, because an injury is very important, because it is one of those deterrents to having an unsafe workplace. The employer ends up with some of that responsibility for the employer and for the safety of the employer.
Well, hang on to that thought right there. We need to take a short break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.